She's also been a corporate officer in one of the largest import companies in the country, maybe even in the world. And she's great fun as well. I've known Janine and Paula both for over 25 years, maybe close to 30 years now. And Kevin Zaharia is a psychiatrist and also has a background in bioengineering and in information sciences. He's also, as I mentioned, a trainer of NLP. He's also a trainer of the Six Thinking Hats method, which is very popular in business, and also of transactional analysis, which has been around in psychotherapy for many, many years. So Paula and Cadlin will be presenting today, and I'm going to let them tell you more about what their presentation is going to be all about. And as you're watching today, I invite you to not only take notes, but please ask questions. We have a chat in both YouTube and on our own platform. So those of you joining us in YouTube, we will be monitoring the chat, and we'll be noticing your questions as they come up, and we can pass them along. I'll be doing that for most of the day. Janine may help with that as well, but I'll be watching for your questions, and I'll pass them along to Paula and to Cadlin. So if there's some comment or question you'd like to give us, please pass that along, and I invite you to join in that way. So without further ado, here's Paula Anderson-Findlay. Paula, it's all yours.
Thank you, Sid. I already have a chat waiting for you, Sid. If you'll go ahead, there's some people that want to talk to us. You'll see it in our private message chat.
Very good.
Hi, everybody. I sure hope that you're enjoying this time to just sit back and participate with us a little bit. If you can't participate with us, but you're just listening, as Sid said, we'll go ahead and have this up on YouTube and you can re-listen to it. I'm going to take just a couple of minutes to just get us caught up, as some of you may not have been with us yesterday, and then we'll move forward. Cadlin and I today are going to have more of a discussion, and we're going to take this building a new reality from potentially the individual, personal, and the individual professional leader, wherever you are, whether you're a emerging leader, whether you're a individual contributor on a team, whether you're on site or part of a remote team and working together as teams normally, or whether because of recent circumstances, you're now a team, and some of the things that we can do with that and how we can develop the talents that we have and spread them around the organization.
Thank you, Paula, for the introduction. So while you'll start the presentation, I will be with you and make some comments and remarks about what is needed in those days.
Great, thank you. All right, so yesterday when we were working with Janine, we went ahead and took a look at the VUCA model: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And we shared with Janine a little bit about what was coming up for us now, or what we were predicting or forecasting, or some of our expectations, and how we might start to build our internal capacity to be able to deal with this. Because our timeline now, when we may have had a future strategic opportunity to go out a few years with recent situations that have been coming up for us across the globe, now that has been contracted. And so how do we as individuals stay open and curious and appreciate what we can do about what's going on, and be able to reflect and look at from that lessons learned and go forward? One of the things that Janine shared with us was rising up and having our eyes focus on the horizon. And when we do that, and we can all just do it now, when we focus and in our mind's eye, or just look up, any upset or fear or anxiety, we may just only feel it a little bit, but we can go ahead and just calmly then close our eyes and begin to look at the horizon rather than looking at potentially the rut that's just right in front of us. That doesn't mean to say that we don't want to be in our present situation, especially if we have things we have to get done, but it just gives us a chance. So I'd like to share a quick story. I'm in Florida and living aboard a sailboat. And back towards the end, right before the end of 2019, I was looking at some things that I wanted to do with my own learning and growth and with my colleagues here and my consulting practice and my clients. And in speaking with some of my colleagues, every once in a while I'd be outside and speaking with them, and I would fortunately see one dolphin would just come up and blow and go back down. And I loved it because I love what the dolphin represents: playfulness, flow, and appreciation. So 2 days ago, I was speaking to one of my colleagues and sharing about launching the website, showcasing what things we would like to add to contribute value to what's going on in this series and what we were going to do. And one dolphin came by. As I began to share with her some of my concerns, as I stopped keeping my eye on the horizon and started thinking about, well, it could get messy here and this could get messy and maybe that there's going to be some messiness. I took a deep breath, I heard a sound, and two dolphins came up and blew. One dolphin had almost no dorsal fin left, in perfection, and the other one was majestic as always. So for me, that was a wonderful symbol and metaphor that I can remind myself to keep my eyes on the horizon. The other key point here is assumptions and reflection. And Catalin and I are going to go ahead and do an exercise around the learning process, utilizing some of what Janine shared with us yesterday around our characteristic developmental exercises. And we'll go ahead and interact with you on that, which would be just great. And we have a way that we want to try and do that. So we'll work with you. And again, for those of you that can't participate, you'll be able to see what we're doing and we'll go ahead and share as we go along. Anything you'd like to add, Catalin?
Thank you, Paula. I think this is a very good thing to know that ahead of us we have sometime not things that are not clear, and I think only our minds can clarify the horizon of what it will be in the future, and is not actually something that is out there, but something that we have to clarify our minds. And of course, we have prepared to talk about those things later.
Great. Well, there's clear skies. Two ahas that I wanted to share that some of you may have had yesterday. And for those of you that were with us yesterday, it might be great if you took the opportunity now, either in the YouTube chat or in our platform chat, to go ahead and put those in now. And Sid's my voice. And Catalin and I can continue to go ahead and work with you on what our ahas were. But two that came up loud and clear when we started to look at VUCA and some of the things that we've been hearing, like we have to pivot. We're going to have to change the way we do business. In our personal lives, a number of things have come up. One of the things that Janine was sharing with us around learning, and we're going to show you in a little bit how this might work, is how yes, we do need to have strategic agility, but the killer app, the killer app is to be agile as learners and to continue to see this as an opportunity to grow. And the other thing is that Janine shared some of her personal experiences and aha that had come to her. And that is, so many times people say, oh, you were so resilient. Or like that dolphin with the imperfect dorsal fin. How incredible to be a dolphin. You need that dolphin fin to go through the world, to show up, to maneuver, to eat, to breed. Well, very resilient, but we also need, and this was the fun thing about the aha that Janine shared, we also need to know that we're resilient right now in the present and that we can be resilient in the future and really hold on to that. Janine, anything you'd like to add to that? She'll get with me in a minute.
Whoops, a nice recap. Great.
Oh, good. Okay. So this slide here is what we want to try to do today. What we want to try to do today is take some of the lessons learned and go ahead and begin to talk about organizations as a system. Just like our family, we have a family, our family system, our teams. If you're an individual contributor, you're going in and out of different systems. If you're a contractor, wherever you are in an organization or whatever you're doing in any walk of life, what we want to do is talk about how we can look at how we talk to ourselves and others and how we represent coming together in a shared message of going forward with our challenges in appreciation, the present moment, and being able to take action in ways that we've never taken them before. So as an example, with the VUCA model, and there's all kinds of models for chaos, for how we might feel, anything that we might at first blush potentially look at as a downward spiral. But given whatever our nature of reality is, there's all kinds of information that we start to want to sort through in our own perspective. And so one of the things that we want to work with today, and we're going to go ahead and walk you through an exercise, is how do we take those and collaborate with others to create even a newer reality that might be much, much different than it's ever been before. And what makes doing that now something unique than it might have been 6 months ago or a year ago? What is it that we need to do to close the gap to be able to address these things and leverage on each other's gifts? So one of the things that you might be thinking is, well, how do I do that? How do I interact and integrate the information that's coming in? And then how do I utilize that to work every day? I have been speaking with clients and colleagues, and I'm getting varied feedback about what people are focusing on. There's some common themes, but they come from a much different initial set of assumptions. So this is an exercise and hopefully will spur some thought and interaction with all of you. And what I want to ask you to do is look at this picture for a minute and look at that triangle as if it is the system that you might consider yourself in. Whether it's a business system, whether it's a large business, whether it's a global business, whether 3 months ago it was a thriving large business and it's now becoming a small business, or your home, or your community. a foundation you're a participant in, your different people that you choose to be with, share. So if you were in a helicopter and you were looking down at this organization, what I'd like you to do is consider, do you tend to be target or goal oriented in a particular experience? Do you tend to be more relationship or people oriented? Might you be more information or task oriented? So yesterday, Janine presented a set of 11 different characteristic developmental experiences. So if you got those, great. If you didn't, you don't need to have them, because I want to walk through this experience with you. So to show you, Catalin and I are going to demonstrate. I'm going to give Catalin one of these experiences, and I'm going to ask him how he would interpret this experience, how he would work through it. So as we go through it, what we might be able to notice is all of us are in different places in our development of growth, and you may think completely differently than he does. So let's just see if we can open up, and hopefully we're going to get some different points of view on this. So Catalin, let me ask you, if you were, and for those of you who have a copy, and we can provide copies to anyone that's on today that wants to see it, it'll be in the slide pack if you go back to the recording on YouTube from yesterday at any time. But also, if you go ahead and send us an email, you'll see on the bottom right-hand side to www.leantalentsystems.com. You can contact us, or our direct email to that website is info@leantalentsystems.com. And maybe Sid can put that in the chat. So you can direct email us at info@leantalentsystems.com, or get to us from the website that you see on your screen now. So Catalin, if I was going to ask you to identify a particular developmental experience, and you happen to choose requires, this would be number 8, requires building a team, starting something from scratch, or fixing or turning around a team or an operation or project in trouble, how might you think through this exercise so that then other people can kind of put their own selves in there?
The way you formulated my questions put me in a way to choose one or the other corners of that triangle where I may see myself. From the experience of how I was working in development with the people in coaching sessions or in developmental programs, then one of the first question I would ask is, what is the context, or what is the type of the project that, for example, that employee will have in the future? And I'll give you an example. If it makes a big difference, for example, when somebody would have a project which is already set by the governing board, and that leader would just have to implement that project. So in that situation, I would look for different type of skill set than, for example, the task of that manager would be to create a strategy which that would have to be presented to the board, and also to get the agreement of the leaders of the other departments. So depending on the type of the context or the project where that leader would have to manifest himself, also to the bigger environment which is outside of the company, I'll look where that manager would have to shift the focus of attention. So instead of thinking that I would have to choose a person which is only relationship or only task oriented or goal oriented, the developmental task would look how that person would shift between those areas. Actually, being appropriate with the type of the project would have to be developed. So it's not a matter of a person is more like a label goal oriented or people oriented or information task oriented, which some may do as a preference because of their own patterns. The task of talent development is actually to be able to shift the internal focus from one to the other, based on the strategy we need to implement. So I'm much more in the favor of looking to the functional aspects of the job than to the type of or characteristic of a person.
Great. So um, I'll pause for a minute, and then if any of you have any questions, just you can raise your hand. Those of you that are on our platform, you'll see the little hand on the left-hand side of your screen. There's the chat function that is there as well, and then you have the chat in YouTube. So in this example, and I talked with Catalin about doing this, but we didn't pick the example ahead of time. It's just more fun this way. What I heard Catalin saying is, given the focus, he may end up here, where he more closer to somewhere in the middle, maybe because he's dealing with people or a particular step or objective or goal in the overall project. He may have to focus on one of these areas, but he's going to look at the function and then figure out which illustrated talents he would put into play. And so what I want to ask you is, if you could take a minute and go ahead and look at this slide, and if you then could put in the chat for us what you would think if you were to look at either the things that you identified yesterday from the challenges that tend to be challenges that are developmental experiences that tend to have the conditions or the criteria that tend to make them highly developmental experiences, or just some situation that you're in right now. And then I also have some examples. Oh, okay. Sid, I see that you're picking up some comments. Do you want to address them for us?
Sure. So Noella put in a great comment, very good observation about asking first about context, as Catalin did. So each type of project may require different strategies, either oriented on target and goal, or relationships, or people, or info and tasks. So context, very, very important. And Nancy made a great comment as well, that all of this was a good reminder to begin with the purpose and the assumptions, and then draw people together with an eye toward these important elements of focus. So I think that at least these folks are right there with you. I imagine everyone else is too. I think those were good comments.
All right, so Nancy must have somehow gotten into my slide pack when Catalin and I were talking about this earlier this morning, and the work that we've been doing in looking at how we need to, think more critically and always start with what our assumptions are, and that big question statement to help unpack what all our assumptions are. Thank you. All right, let me share with you something else, Catalin. I mentioned that I'd been speaking to some clients and colleagues, and I asked them the question of, as a leader or as an observer of other people in their work setting, as individual contributors and being close with their people in many ways, even though most worked remotely, although not everybody did, how they're actually closer. In fact, the human resources people that I've been speaking to are finding that they're seeing each other a lot more now that they're using virtual uh, devices and video conferencing than sometimes they did when they were all in the same building or in different locations. Now with what we've been experiencing. But Kathleen, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just take a couple of these examples and have you maybe just informally unpack them for us a little
So
bit.
actually, my experience comes from more than 10 years working in talent development with a profile that is looking to the main factors, success factors, which a manager or sales or specialist would have in a company. So obviously, some of the jobs would need would require or more people oriented. Like for example, if you go into the um, um, customer service type of job, then obviously you have to naturally orient yourself to the people. But in the same time, I think talents would not require to have just one emphasis of the skills, because always when you work in the customer service, you just have some task or some issues or problem solving, and for that you need to have people which also has the ability to think and to create solutions. In the same time, not I remember examples from the, if I remember well, from FedEx, when a simple employee had to take the initiative and to propose a goal, which is which was to send some wedding skirt to a customer, and that goal was not set by a manager. That goal was simply something that that employee was able to set. So in those situations, I'm thinking how is a possibility for each of us, either home, either in a business environment, to actually mobilize our resources according to the needs. We have that assumption that people, and we are getting used to get labels like you are like that, you are like that, and people are not labels.
Right.
And looking from a functional perspective, which also I know also from the NLP world, is looking how I enable thinking, how I enable behavior, how I enable those kind of empowering affirmations, and then train the behaviors needed for certain situations. Nowadays, we see lots of turbulence around us. We see lots of chaotic things which happen in the society, in the economy. Now, is the question, what would be more relationship, more information, or more goal-oriented? I think all of them might be needed to be used, maybe not in the same time, maybe is in a kind of sequence. And here, coming back to that eighth point around how we're building a team, I think one of the things is how you get into the team of first people, and you understand what are their strengths to be used and ready to be feedback and positively reinforced. And in the same time, one of the task of any leader is to think how it will develop, and one of the development is just to allow it to exist. I remember a situation when I had a former colleague. She got a very bad, we just sent an offer to a client, and then the client was replying very bad, with very bad words to my colleague, and she was completely emotionally devastated because how come, maybe the earth was breaking down because she got that answer. And in my thinking was in that moment, okay, but look, first I need somebody to be able to give an answer I'm not looking to the relevancy of that answer. And if I am going to create an answer, is anyway, I have to build it with my own colleague. So in that moment, I had to focus in a completely different way and not towards goal. So the possibility of having that inner flexibility into all those areas is the answer I would give to complex situations, to turbulent situations, and maybe when we'll have a nice and very smooth future, which I don't believe anyway it happens, because always we have challenges. It depends how we frame them actually. Then we will say, okay, I'll rely on a relationship oriented, or I'll rely on the information or only goal task oriented.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I'm noticing that we're getting some more participation, and I want to go ahead and share with you something that I spoke with you about, and I'd like to share with others. It isn't unusual, and let me go ahead and I'm
Yeah.
going to go back and share the slides. It isn't unusual in an organization for some people to have a preference in one area or another, but they don't show up that way because it's not part of the culture. That's obvious. Um, what it might show up like is, oh, well, here all of us now are thinking, well, Catalan, he kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's kind of obvious. You'd have to be able to look at the whole context and then figure out, based on the whole project and then the particular function, how you want to orient yourself. However, another little tweak that makes a difference is Catalan, depending on his relationship with people in the organization, the culture of the organization, how much the organization is willing to embrace their initial assumptions, may be seen as being very ambiguous and may be seen as being misunderstood because these people that are in their assumption at that particular moment, not as individuals that we're labeling, can't get a read from him on whether he's being decisive or not.
Yeah. I think one of the advantages that any culture would profit is uh, go from the labeling to look how the processes, how the behaviors are there, and then try finding ways to adapt those behaviors to give proper feedback loops there. And I remember from yesterday the what Janine presented with the loop to the single loop learning. If we consider only in the smooth times when we just make a kind of copy paste of the all the strategy we have, we go in a single loop. And what means that sometime if I'm looking now here, as you say, Paula, how I look in the organization, challenging not only the strategies I have in the human resources, but also the assumptions I make how the human resources are, or human beings are working. And I have here in my mind that we have to shift our gears from a industrial society to a post-industrial society where nowadays many jobs are taken from people given to the machines. But in the same time, we have to integrate here humans. Just the other day was in the news that Microsoft News just fired some employees, just replacing the news how are taken by Microsoft News with some artificial intelligence. But those journalists would have to have something as a job. And I think there is a job the machine yet cannot do, like, for example, ethical approach. how we approach the living of the organism, maybe in the ocean, maybe in the forest. So the climate change requires to challenge our assumptions how life works sometime, and from here we can give to people completely different jobs in the future. And of course, but that requires also how the companies are looking to the human resources in itself. So people are not just labels and replacing parts.
Exactly. Exactly. So I want to give some examples, and I see in the chat that someone is saying, from this triangle, I understand that I was always mixing task, goal, target with task info orientation. So so just in that little piece, it's just an opportunity to drop down into our thinking, identify the assumptions, and that's what we mean by double loop learning, oversimplified just for this moment. Stop. Of course, there's things we need to do, but take a few minutes to look at the assumptions and reflect back and possibly try on different views. And again, the experience that I talked about, sometimes we need to show up in different areas because that's where people initially need to know at least we're with them. Because what we want to do when we're connecting with others in a system is we want people to get not so much in that very moment that we have what they need or the answer to the problem, but more we know what they want and what's the connection. And it could very well be a very clear, black and white, concrete goal that's a have to yesterday, like we're facing now. So I have a couple of examples. I'll just read them real quickly, and I'm going to look at the chat again too. Um, one of the people that I spoke with said that, and she's in a new job in the healthcare, and she got the job right before COVID-19. So her response, and it's a long-term care community. She's been a human resources leader for a long time, but spent many, many years at all levels of being a human resources contributor. But at this point now, think of her as someone who's taking that helicopter view. And we can hear in what she responded to me how she's looking at all the areas, but there is a slight preference because of what she needs to be focusing on, because of what's needed. So maybe 70% of her job needs to be this, and then the other 10, 20, 30, maybe to take a look at the kinds of things that Catalin is illustrating for us in his thinking and the talent development work that he's done about what could she do to even meet the future, farther out into the future, and the ability to even see more clearly. So her response was, what I need on my imaginary dashboard. And so it's like, what things do I need to pay attention to every day with my new job in a long-term care community? Understand that the front line worry most, of course, about the pandemic. We have no cases and use all the best practices, social distancing, personal protective equipment, temperature checks every day, et cetera, et cetera. As a leader, I worry. So there's the worry and the worry. As a leader, I worry how we will maintain staff ratio if we do have an outbreak, potential litigation, or workers' compensation claims that will be new case law of the future. So from where I sit on the Lean Talent Systems team, new case law on future litigation. Wow, overwhelming. because we can't keep up with case law now. And because I could spend all my time educating all the executives in the organization that are making decisions that we can't do it that way, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, the worry every day. She's got those frontline workers that she needs to be there for. Another person says, I need every day to handle all situations with kindness, especially to be kind to myself and others. If I don't ask for what I want, I'm not going to get it. And I need to remember they hired me for a reason. And I mentioned that in an example yesterday. And then I have one more I want. And this is someone who is really looking about how this future came much, much closer in and still needs to look much, much farther out into the future. Every day on my dashboard, I not only need to pay attention to what's happening today, but I have to pay attention to what's happening tomorrow, the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that. So those are wonderful intentions that these people have and want for their dashboards. How do they do it? I mean, how do we every day show up and pay attention to our dashboard? Are there any other comments, Sid, from the YouTube channel?
Actually, I put most of them in the chat, but I had a comment.
Great.
Actually, two comments. I was thinking a few moments ago as we were looking at the triangle that it's perfect if you're talking about one context with one target or one goal. But when we're talking about complexity, what we're talking about is something much more complicated, because essentially what we're talking about is having to deal with multiple contexts at the same time. That's our life right now. That's what we have to do. So I'm looking at this and saying, all right, if I have a target or a goal at work, I'm managing the relationships and the people I'm working with, the information, the task. Nancy had mentioned the community that I'm dealing with as well. Do those targets and those goals comport with what the community might need? Catalin mentioned the environment, which is certainly important. And I was thinking about the family. And I'm thinking, all right, I have this goal at work, this target at work. I have to manage the relationships at work. I have to manage the information, the task at work. But I also have to manage my relationship at home, which may have different targets or goals. In fact, the target and the goal may be the relationship. So these things could even get turned around a little bit. And those relationships, of course, depend on information. So as you were just talking about your friend in healthcare, I was thinking, here's a person who has to manage all the things that she's doing at work and manage the goals, manage the targets, manage the people. But she's working in a setting where she might get sick and bring it home to her kids and her family. So we're dealing with the complexity of that, of more than just the shared talents she has at work and the challenges that she has, but she takes those challenges home with her as well. And she takes them out into her community and into her environment, the wider environment, because people could be spreading viruses literally now in ways that we didn't before. So I was struck by that, and I wanted to hear any comments you had and comments Cadlin might have just from the complexity angle. About
actually, it was partly I was answering into the chat that we are getting used to thinking polar or a single label or like 3 labels, but actually there are many more angles. We have to train ourselves to think in multiple dimensions, because, for example, one of the dimension we do not see is purely ourselves. Sometimes we look ahead, we look to the environment, we look to the other people, we look to the tasks, while we forget about us, while we are maybe one of the first resource we have to take here. And here, everything goes back with our upbringing, our families, how we behave. So everything is interconnected, and this single loop and would not be enough to be used in development. Obviously, we have to take the approach of double loop learning, but sometimes I think it is a third loop of learning, which we don't see. We have to look to as I said before, is simply the nature of life and nature of human experience, because everything we do around, in a way, we have to take care how we build that, which we sometimes forget in favor of profit. Yeah, here's the the slide that you have shared, Paula. Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
this is the very important that changing looking different or enabling human resources and human beings requires the way we are looking also to the human beings, even from that single loop or double loop. It is well known the strategy of going rewards or punishment. That is a pure single loop type of approach. While if I look into the double loop learning, then we go to coaching process. We have to ask people in the coaching and to ask them to reflect. Or as I have the chance, like Toyota did, they implemented in the whole company the process of Toyota Kata coaching, which nowadays is used in continuous improvement in a lot of industries. Which and I had the chance here to work with automotive industry, where they heavily use that double loop in coaching processes.
Thank you. I am seeing that we've got some good chat conversation going on. And what you and Sid and some of the others are pointing to is clear, but how do we do it? Like, and on tomorrow, day 3 of the series, Sid will be able to share with us some very practical how I can do this. So that's going to be also delivered in the same format at the same time, and it'll be recorded on YouTube as well. So I'm looking forward to that. And we had talked about the dashboard. So if you'll notice, just labels, but in the typical day of someone that has responsibilities in the workplace and in home life, we have Project A, Project B. Are you kidding? People are thinking about performance reviews and appraisals. Well, yeah, all that, because some people need us to really hold consistent, have enough groundedness to hold consistency so that then they know that they're safe and secure, and the people that have normally been looking out for them are looking out for all those things. And so you're not going to be forgotten. Those regular cyclical communications and organizational cultural habits are all there. And we have the team and quarterly reports. All that has to happen. So how do we do it? And then how do we keep our energy? And you'll notice that everything's like, whoop. So how do we juggle multiple contexts all at the same time? And I'm going to go ahead and go to the next slide here. Here's a picture or a potential way for us to start talking about it or to look at it. So if we think about, all right, I've identified 3 key things that I really want to work on, because I know that if I don't, or we don't focus on fear, that then I'll be able to be more open. I'll know where I need to thrive personally. I'll be able to maintain some inner quiet and focus. I'll be able to spread that around my team, my organization, spread it around in my family, the different systems that I'm alive in. And even better, that being connected to my passion, being able to be Paula, be able to be whoever we are. Those of you that are on the session with us today. So if I can get in touch with that inner capacity and say, okay, on my dashboard, I want to become more comfortable with the tension that's occurring so I can sit with it, so that then I can start to stretch the boundaries of my own openness and creativity, so that I can do better, be more grounded. If I really think about it without a picture and a shared image that I have with my family or with the different teams that I work with and with my clients, then expectations may go unfulfilled and my purpose and intention are overridden by overwhelm because I just can't sort it out. It's too much. So with a shared image or picture in these different systems that are bound by some short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals or objectives, then I can begin to collaborate a little bit and have the ability to open up and innovate and think differently and be the looking at the bigger picture and what assumptions am I putting into play because I think that's what the function requires. Or am I going to ask for help? And am I going to look for the person that has preferences and a job completely different from mine? You know, it is tourism and hospitality now going to become just more sanitized and more sanitized? Or are we going to move towards really fabulous self-service, even in a gorgeous resort? In healthcare, are we going to have healthcare providers getting better and better and better and better? Are they going to be able to be on the front line forever and ever and ever? And is everything going to get contracted? Or is healthcare going to become more of a partnership where the entire medical center, the entire staff are all caregivers, just not the mother, father, son, daughter, friend that brought the person to the care center, where everybody is, where the chief executive officer of the healthcare medical center, biggest one in the globe, is a caregiver. Catalin, I can leave this up if you want to talk a little bit to this, and then I'm noticing the time, so I'd like to leave a little bit of time for some interaction and give Sid an opportunity to let people know what they'll be doing tomorrow.
Part of one thing I would think is sometime we're looking to that cloud, which is a real fog, which when we are looking from the realistic perspective nowadays, and if I ask you what is going to be within 6 months, or what is going to be in the 3 weeks, when it is an executive order that is putting shutting down, where maybe there is something that cannot be work because there are traffic restrictions and all sorts of changing that are happening, means that we are looking into that shared image and we may see nothing. One of the stress strategies actually is to try to put there something that you had in the past, and here it might not work. Simply that we have to be aware that sharing to have a shared image means sometimes we have to construct a new one, and that requires that we hear the little people you have here which are looking towards that image has to hold their guts while they feel tension, while they feel uncertainty, and they have to cooperate there and overcome the patterns we're used with. Maybe we cannot imagine now the future would be there. We have to create it. Probably none of us would think nowadays, probably in 1970s, that we will hold a cell phone that is little than a spoon into our hands and walk over. So that shared image means sometimes just to imagine the future together, and in that we need to hold our inner stress, inner tensions, and also to keep a quality conversation. Part of the, as I said before, now I made a point to technological part with the phone, but let's imagine in that shared image human beings and different ethics and different way to integrate life and to take care of it from more ecological, I would not say win-win, but win-win-win perspective.
There's a comment from one of the participants with this. I'm going to go ahead. I'm noticing in that we're right on the hour, and I'm going to go ahead and mention something because I think this is a wonderful way to kind of wrap things up for today with regard to the slides, and then I'd like to open it up for any discussion from the team or anyone else. But the comment is, sharing the image is an open declaration of the intention that keeps the motivation up to clarify the image. So that's a wonderful quote. Thank you so much for that. That really helps to put together the essence of what Catalin was just saying and what we wanted to share with you today. And the ability for us to get excited. So I took a little artistic liberty. This is the Lean Talent Systems flag. But we want to go ahead and open it up here and have a little discussion, and then we'll finish up on time at 15 minutes after the hour.
Yeah, thank you, Paula. I would invite the other participants here in the group. They may want to speak their voice and open the mic and say something.
So for me, I always like talking about these multiple layers of systems, and it's always striking to me to see the different ways people display this. I love your slides, Paula, because you visualize these things differently than the way they are in my head, but it causes me to see them differently as well and think about them differently as well. And I liked your comment, Catalin, about sometimes that really is a cloud. Sometimes people's images are so cloudy of their future that they can't imagine a future for themselves at all. That's one of the places depression comes from. One of the things we know about very, very depressed people, of whom we are surrounded by now, all over the world, is that you ask them, well, what do you see in the future? And they go, future? What future? They have empty images. Yeah. So that's one of the things I'll be working on tomorrow as well, when I'm discussing with everyone, is how to create those a little bit, but also how to move toward those images, move toward those goals in a way that feels safe as well, because that's one of the things that causes a problem for people. We haven't talked about that much today. We talked about the complexity. We've talked about the need to balance the relationship aspects and the informational aspects to get the goal. but we haven't talked about all the things that scare people and how they scare themselves so much and legitimately scare themselves. And so I'll be addressing some of that tomorrow as well. But I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on that as well as the wonderful discussion we've had around the complexity of the issues. So anyone who has thoughts on any of that?
Well, I do have a little comment, and that is, I know you're not scary, so I know tomorrow. So, and I love, and talking about pictures, just quickly, when Sid talked about the moving toward and what scares us, are we taking the dog for a walk in the park because we're getting out on a beautiful day, or is there a dog chasing us in the park? Which way are we going? And we can get so overwhelmed. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm glad you like my pictures. I'm glad it made you think differently. That makes me happy, Sid.
Probably because you're tired of the way I've been thinking already.
Not at all. Not at all.
So, Catalin, talk a little bit more, if you would, about your study of complexity. Just get intellectual for like 2 minutes. So what does it mean to you
Yes,
when you talk about this field?
Yeah,
Because
so
it's interesting to listen to you talk about it.
yeah, actually, I was interested in that since I was putting myself some questions like how these studies are done, even in the mental health. For example, with the studies in medicine, and also how the measurements are done nowadays in science. So I became curious how those things are going. And I asked myself, for example, we have seen questionnaires, we have seen different type of measurements, and I had the curiosity, where the measurement starts off, and I found out actually the first answer is in physics. And one of the simple example is about the apple falls from the tree, and then you take the speed and the position, and then you make a map about that reality. You have a parallel isomorphic reality, which we call in NLP a map about that territory. And I was thinking, okay, this is the only way to look into reality. And because if you look to a flower, you cannot say that the rose is quantitatively more or less than another flower, like I don't know, or like a tree. You cannot compare a flower with a tree. Everything has its beauty. And here it's a different way to look into the reality, not from the is more or less, is big or small. You have to have another approach about the shape, about the way that the forms are made. And here you need a different way to approach that. And also we see that the dynamic of the spring, of the summer, not every tree is like the other. So how basically we cannot compare one entity with another. That's why I said labeling is just simple to say one tree is the same as the other tree is completely not true. And here it came that one of the tools that developed also a way to measure and way to look into those things was complexity science. And I became really, really curious about how those things putting it together, like as Robert, our friend Robert, is saying, if you put hydrogen with oxygen all together, not only through the two compounds it's making the water, but them together are making the water. So it's a completely new the idea of emergency comes from that side. As well, we I've being in medical school, is not when you learn medicine, you don't even if they try to teach you on parts. Actually, the human being and the organism itself is not in parts; it function together. If you take a watch and you hammer it, analyzing the parts, as I was talking the other day with Paula, you'll not have any clue about what is time. So the same is about looking to human beings part of a bigger organism. And here you have to have a different view. Unfortunately, I don't know in the United States, but even in my school, I haven't been taught of the complexity science. Only last 10 years, I think, very special classes I had only in bioengineering school. They taught me about the complexity, but in high schools, for example, only I think uh, 10 years ago they were introducing the subject. So part of this is coming part of the assumptions we make, the way we're taught in schools, how to look into the reality. It's framing a way how to look then to many other things, from technology to the human beings. So yeah, and Carmen is commenting that yes, there is
Yes.
a confusion between the complex and being complicated. So yes, the opposite of complexity is complexity is not is beauty, is not being complicated. The nature does build complexity, which is simplicity. If you take to how a cell works, it's a very tiny organism there that is the most simple way to make it. Only we human beings are managing to make complicated things. So here is coming my perspective, and then working with people and coaching and developing them and understanding to another level. I was going from the human body to human mind, trying to understand. Of course, here NLP came with a lot of methods, which of course work, but I needed more understanding to go beyond what is there. And part of the new understanding I had was complexity science and looking to the human aspects as that and that and that together, and could not be separated apart, as I am not separated by the environment where I live.
Catalin, we do have another comment that I'd like you to address, and then I think we'll go ahead and let Sid wrap us up and get ready for tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm reading.
Considering the individual.
Yeah. So yeah, if we look to the person, is the question how sometimes we overcome the self beliefs and the frames and the assumptions the person have about themselves. For example, I may very well have my shoes into my room, but if I say to myself, no, it's raining today, I'm not going to run, then I'm going to limit my potential, because I still have legs and I have lungs to breathe, and I can run. But what we're saying to ourselves is not enabling sometimes what we have as a resource, and sometimes we don't need exceptionally uh, uh, um, biological feature. I cannot be a Pavarotti, but I think I have still two hands, and only my mind is sometimes limiting the way I'm going to use them. If I can say hello to people around me, I can have the ability to scan my body, for example, or I can analyze my language. Those are things that I can say to myself, okay, let's look how it is. Sometimes you need guidance, you need some mentor, or you need some trainer to show something. But nowadays, only if you open the YouTube and do a search, sometimes you get information. Something are relying on the informational part. Sometimes you need people, but even people you can find today. We have 6 degrees of separation, as one of the famous quotes are saying. So only if you don't want to find where is the mentor on that, and I will not say country, I would say planet, you can reach that person. So that for me was always the idea of getting in contact from the people. And sometimes people are busy, but if you insist, they usually answer, and they could get, because some of the things are not about explicit information. Some part of development is implicit information we carry in our bodies, and that's why this online technology is good. I don't think we can replace that with the physical interaction and creating human experience through contact. And with washing hands and keeping 2 meters still is possible. We don't have to limit ourselves just because the government said to us, okay, temporarily stay home because it's safe. Even the strategies nowadays, I was thinking about the virus, is a matter of innovation within the health systems to find better way to target epidemiologically where is the person that might have a risk, instead of shutting down entire cities. So here is a lot of place of saying to ourselves, yes, we can.
Very good.
And there we just had a little invitation to join in Catalin's head. Thank you.
I wanted to make sure everybody got to wander around inside Catalin's brain for a little bit,
That's
because it's always a
great.
very interesting place to explore.
Thank you. Sid, if you want to go ahead and give us a little hint more,
I
you
just
gave
want
us a little
to,
bit.
and tomorrow we're going to be taking this a step into how to do it for yourself, how to take all this complexity, all the fears we might have, all the figuring out where we want to go, and moving forward instead of staying stuck, and mapping out for ourselves what kind of a future we might want to have, and then putting the things in place we need to make that happen. And I have to say that yesterday's talk by Janine and you and Catalin, Paula, discussing this today has been just great. And also, I really just appreciate the fact that we're all able to come together like this from such far off places. With Paula, you're in Florida, Catalin is in Bucharest, and Carmen, we see on our screen as well, is in Montreal, and Janine, of course, is in Washington, D.C., and I'm here in New Orleans. So it's great to be able to bring the different perspectives and the different viewpoints from literally different places. So that's a lot of fun. And you guys did a great job today, and I've really enjoyed listening to these things, and we'll have a good time tomorrow as well. So I'd like to thank everybody who joined us. Thanks for the comments. Uh, Thanks for joining us, and giving us your questions and your participation as well. It's been great fun. So thank you all, and we'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place on the internet. Thanks again. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye bye, everybody. Have a lovely, lovely day and evening.